this is a good example of you know, watching out for less than. And I've seen, you know, Math 70 and Math 80 students, you know, they kind of get used to doing it a certain way and they're not watching the wording, and so they forget that less than you have to switch the order, so be careful with that. Alright, I'm going to put a little star by that so that you kind of put that in your notes to remember to watch that. Okay, here we want to evaluate x minus y. And what is this telling you here? If we have x equals to 7.39 and y equals to 4.57, what is this evaluate telling you to do? Subtract, right? And so we're going to subtract 7.39 and 4.57. Good idea to put that sign there. And so we're going to subtract. So 9 minus 7, that's 2. And of course we've got to borrow from 3, so that 7 becomes a 6, and so that's 13 minus 5, 8, decimal point, and 2. Alright. Okay. We have, in this next problem, we want to multiply. And we have 0.3, and then we have parentheses. And we get 0.3 again. Well, what operation are we doing here in this problem? Multiplication, right. So is in our order of operations, are we applying parentheses or multiplication? Multiplication, right? There's nothing, parentheses means to simplify within the parentheses, right? Whereas there's nothing to simplify, so we just multiply. So, right away, boom. 9.9? 0.9, you sure?
No.
Be aware. Be very aware of this problem, because this is one of those that are deceiving, or not necessarily deceiving, but the mind is kind of like it plays a trick on you, because the thing that you have to watch out for with decimals when you're multiplying is that the answer, so we have 3 times 3 is 9, right? But we have to count the number of decimal places, right? Here's 1, here's 2. So that means from the decimal point, which is after the 9, we have to go how many places for our decimal point?
2.
1, 2. Decimal point. 0.09. 0.09. Because this is two decimal places, right? So this is a common error that students make. They look at 0.3 times 0.3, boom, 0.9, and it's really something else.
That's why I stopped at my multiplications last night, because I
it's
don't know,
good.
because I could tell when you count.
Yeah. So that's one of those things where you have to watch out for, because adding, you have to line up the decimal points for you, and then get your answer. Your answer is going to be, that decimal point is going to be right below your sum of all your numbers. Whereas with multiplication, you have to count the number of places and move that decimal point over that number of places in whatever numbers you're multiplying. Okay, so
that's confusing though, but if you have a problem like 7
it is.
times 7, or 0.7 times 0.7.
Right. So we want to count the decimal places for the product. Product meaning our answer. So if we have 0.7 times 0.7, well, we have 2 decimal places, right? So we know that 7 times 7 is 49, right? So we're going from the decimal point after the 9, 1, 2 places. So it's when your number, your answer, has 2 digits in it, like this one does, you have to rely on going 2 decimal places. Okay? So that means our answer is 0.49. Okay? Alright, any questions?
Yes, if you had 0.3 times 0.3, you'd have to put the 0 in front of the point?
No. No, you don't. You don't have to put that 0 in front. Now see this one, you have a 0 before the 9, so you pretty much can tell that pretty much not have a problem with making a mistake that that's 0.09 and not just 9. But what if you have something like 3 times 0.3? Okay, so that's 3 times 0.3, right? And you get 9. Now you're gonna go how many decimal places?
1.
Just 1, right? Well, if you just put a little tiny point like that, it could be easy to mistake that 0.9 for just 9. So that's why I tell you to put a 0 in front of it, and you're less likely to mistake that for a 9 when you do that. But without the decimal, without the 0, that is just as correct as if there's a 0.9 there. Okay? So with math, there's a lot of procedure in math, and it helps to try to be consistent with how you work the problems. And the more consistent you are, the less likely, if you know that, and especially if you know that this particular procedure works for you. In this case, putting the 0 before the 0.9, you're more likely to see that that's a 0.9 and not just 9. But doing that consistently all the time, putting that 0 for all the decimal numbers, it's going to become a habit for you, and you won't have to worry about, well, let's see, do I have to put a 0 there or not put a 0? You know what I mean? You just do it, and then it just becomes a habit, and so you're less likely to make errors. And you want to try to do things to where you're making as few mistakes as possible. And that's why you see some people in math make few errors, and others make a lot of little mistakes. You know what I mean? Just forget something. A lot of that has to do with procedure and doing things the same way, and knowing what